Transformers 1. This is a movie I've had conflicted feelings about. So I was really excited about this movie when it was announced. Because to me, Transformers, right? When they announced this, I'm like, Transformers animated movie. I was like, yes, it started in the comic books. It started that way. Let's bring it back to that form. Let's bring it back to its roots. Obviously they've had Transformers shows and animated forms since the last 40 years. They've never really stopped. But it did feel like ever since Beast Wars, there hasn't been a show that really connected in the mainstream with Transformers. There's been good shows like the War for Cybertron series on Netflix. We've had the what is it? Uh, my brain. Um, Transformers Prime. I mentioned that one. I think. So yeah, we've had good shows, but it hasn't connected in the mainstream. The only thing that's connected in the mainstream has been the Transformers movies, which are not good. There's 5 of them, and they're all pretty fucking flawed movies. And then we got Bumblebee and Beast Wars, which are flawed movies. They're a little bit more fun and better put together than the Michael Bay movies, at least story wise and character wise and things like that. I would say maybe the effects wise and some of the directions a little bit better than Michael Bay's movies in some ways. I'm not but regardless, this movie was very, very much like my excitement was there. But then they put out the first trailer and it didn't kill my excitement, but I was a little conflicted about this movie. And then also the fact that this movie has the Wild Robot coming out the week after. I don't know. This Transformers movie seems a little bit odd. And then also when they started announcing a voice cast for this, you got Scarlett Johansson, Keegan Michael Key, Chris Hemsworth as Optimus Prime, Brian T. Tyler Henry, I think that's his name, as Megatron. I'm very old school Transformers. I know 80s Transformers. That's the Transformers I know the best. Not hearing Peter Cullen and all these original voice actors, even though some of them not being with us, is like, wait a minute, whoa, you're doing something here that's kind of bothering me a little bit. But then I saw the trailer and I was like, okay, the voice sounds okay. We'll see how the movie goes. But it still didn't look great to me. But I've heard nothing about great things about this movie via early screenings or early fan events. So I finally sat down and watched the movie. And I gotta say, I love this movie. I really do. But I also have a lot of problems with it. I will talk about those problems more in the spoiler section, which I will warn you about before I go into spoilers. So feel free to talk about hear my thoughts about everything. Non-spoiler. And then if you want to avoid spoilers, you can click off. Here's my problem with this movie. Okay, or not my problem with this movie. Let's start with my pros. Like I said, I really do think that this movie was surprisingly heavy in Transformers lore. Essentially, this movie starts off one way, and then there's a twist about halfway through that changes the entire movie and everything that they were doing in the movie. And when you get to that twist, it starts diving you deep into Transformers lore, which is like, whoa. I didn't think they were going to go that deep. Because you watch the trailers for this thing, you can definitely tell this is for younger kids. This is for, new upcoming fans, right? This is not for us, older fans. Now, I will say, older fans are going to like this movie, and they're going to like aspects about it, but they also might have issues with other things, right? But, still, there's issues with this movie that definitely hold it back, but that's one of the strongest things about this, how much it goes into Transformers lore. And actually does all that. I really just thought this was going to be a fun adventure movie with the bots learning how to transform, and then Megatron and Optimus fight at the end. But they actually develop a real rich conflict for this world and these characters and why they are becoming the way they are, and I was like, okay, this is pretty sick. Additionally, I think Brian Tyree Henry and Chris Hemsworth, I didn't notice them at a certain point, and I just noticed their characters. Early on in the film, it was very obvious that it was them, but the more that the characters became the iconic characters, right? Because at the beginning of the movie, it's Orion Pax and B-16, but the more the movie went along, those characters really became those characters. The voice actors changed their voices, and it was like, oh, and I really was into it so much. And there's that. And I read somewhere that Chris Hemsworth really got vocal coaching from Peter Cullen, and you kind of feel that a little bit because to me it never he almost never sounded like Chris Hemsworth. There's a couple lines I'm like, yep, that's Chris Hemsworth. I knew it was him because how much they've been marketing a movie around it being him, but really it wasn't him, and I think that's pretty impressive. Animation's gorgeous in this movie. I do think the bot designs, like the robot faces, maybe took a little bit getting used to a little bit. But for the most part, the animation is gorgeous, especially when they go up to the surface and you see all that scenery. Like, holy shit. And how expansive Cybertron is and everything. It's just really great. Yeah, so I think that's all my positives. Oh, I really like to seeing Steve Buscemi in a movie again, doing a voice. That was pretty cool. There's nothing more than that. I just really like seeing that. And also, I think my favorite character arc in the movie was Megatron. I loved his downfall. I think it really worked. I had a couple issues with that. And now let's get into spoilers. I don't know if this is a spoiler, but I think I'm going to treat it as a spoiler. I really don't like Bumblebee in this movie. I think he's... See, the thing with Bumblebee in this movie is, from what I'm gathering, the reason they chose what to do with Bumblebee is the last couple Bumblebee appearances in Beast Wars and the Bumblebee movie, he didn't talk. Right? He didn't talk in those movies, and so they wanted to give Bumblebee more of a speaking role and be more, a character this time compared to the last couple of movies. Like Beast Wars, or Rise of the Beast, he was more of like a fun cameo character at the end of the movie, and he was in it at the beginning. But for the most part, he was just kind of there. He wasn't really a major part of the movie, and so take that what you will with that one. For me, what bothers me about this is I think they obviously did that, and then they went another direction with Bumblebee's character that I think just the two meshing together didn't work, which is that they wanted to make the character goofy and fun for kids. So they got Keegan-Michael Key being Bumblebee, and Keegan-Michael Key being Bumblebee, he never felt like Bumblebee. He felt like Keegan-Michael Key. Now, there's a couple moments when he's throwing around swords and he's doing all that. I'm like, okay, that feels like part of Bumblebee's character, which is that Bumblebee can be funny but also kind of badass. Like, Bumblebee's got a personality, right? But like, to me, I'm sitting there going like, wait a minute, like, this is not Bumblebee, this is Keegan-Michael Key. And I kept kind of sticking with it, right? Because I was waiting to see if like Optimus Prime and Megatron in this movie, they don't start out feeling like Megatron, but maybe by the end of the movie, that's where it's going to go, right? I knew these characters were going to eventually get somewhere, and it never did. It never worked. It never worked for me. And it's sad because there's several moments with Keegan's character in this theater where the audience was laughing. I laughed, right? We all laughed at some of his jokes because some of it really worked. There's particularly one where the four bots in the movie get captured, and they're like, why is he gagged? And he's like, they're like, because he wouldn't stop talking. And they're like, even when he was unconscious? And they're like, especially when he was unconscious. And that was pretty funny. Like, but at the same time, it's like, okay, but that's not Bumblebee. You've made this entirely different character. And it almost makes me go, well, okay, then if you really want to make like a funny, goofy character for the kids, then why don't you just bring another bot into it and then have Bumblebee? Like, I don't know why you needed to, do that. Like, they're clearly changing enough Transformers lore that why not just, like, add a fifth bot to the group? One's a goofy side character, right? I don't know, it just didn't work for being Bumblebee. The other problem I have with this movie is Megatron's arc. While it worked well enough and I really enjoyed his arc, I felt like it was a little bit rushed because essentially Megatron, basically the bots go in this cave. They learn that their leader Sentinel Prime is a fucking asshole. Basically, he's working with the enemy and making them mine and took their transformation cogs and all this stuff. And they learn all this lore about how their current version of the world got started, and now they're kind of realizing this, and Megatron immediately becomes like, what the fuck? Like, I'm never gonna trust a leader again. And that's fair. Like, don't trust a leader again. And it's like, but I don't know, it just felt like, alright, the amount that he was angry and ready to kill felt like, okay, wait a minute, like, this is a little bit too far. But then again, I don't know if that's the point. Like, it was supposed to feel that way because he is Megatron, but at the same time, it just felt like a little bit rushed, but for the most part, it worked. And I don't know, I really like this movie. Sorry, guys, I went to this movie late last night. But I really like this movie overall. I think it really worked. To me, though, I do think this movie is being overhyped. I think some people are calling this, like, I've seen reviews saying, well, this is the Spider-Verse of, like, the Transformers movies. Fuck that. It's not that good. It's more like the Mutant Mayhem of that universe, where that movie had a lot of celebrity voices. Some of it felt awkward. Some of it worked. It's trying to reboot it and be for the younger kids. Some of it worked, some of it didn't, and that's kind of how I feel about this movie. Some of it worked, some of it didn't, but it is a good start to whatever they're building. And if they can keep this level of excitement and make something cool with it, cool. But I definitely need to see more before I say I'm fully in love with this universe. But I will say, on first viewing, I love this movie more than Mutant Mayhem. So I think that's a better sign for this movie overall. Let me know your thoughts. Like, share, and subscribe.